Good evening and welcome to Real Talk, defining the conscious man committed to serve, where Phi Beta Sigma fraternity pauses to address the aggressive mantra launched by our International Brotherhood. I'm Sam Walthour, International Executive Director of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, and it is my honor to welcome and thank you for joining us on this evening. At this time, to bring greetings on this evening and to set the stage for the occasion, please allow me to introduce Brother John B. Lamoth, the first International Vice President of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. Let us welcome him.
You're funny.
Good evening. Greetings to the past international presidents, the General Board, and members of the Distinguished Service Chapter of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. Mary Bro Wright, International Grand Ambassadors, and members of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. Council of Presidents, and fellow Greeks of the National Pan-Hellenic Council, special guests, and all the Distinguished Service Chapter members of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. It is my pleasure to greet you on behalf of the Brotherhood and the International Headquarters team of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. For 103 years, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated has been committed to improving the lives and the living conditions of communities throughout the United States and around the world. We believe in the principles of brotherhood, scholarship, and service, and remain dedicated to our mission of culture for service and service to humanity. We continue with this commitment even today. To offer a glimpse into Phi Beta Sigma's programmatic initiatives, we've prepared this brief review. Please focus your attention to the screen.
Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated was founded on January 9, 1914, on the campus of Howard University, Washington, D.C., by three courageous collegiate leaders, the Honorable Abram Langston Taylor, Honorable Leonard F. Morris, and Honorable Charles Ignatius Brown. From these three visionary leaders, the institution of college-educated men has evolved to mass over 165,000 members, operating in 650 chapters throughout the United States of America, Europe, Africa, and Asia. As a brotherhood of conscious men actively serving our communities, the fraternity's programmatic focus, termed the Trilogy of Change, is segmented into four key international program areas: Bigger and Better Business, Education, Social Action, and the Sigma Beta Clubs. To provide a glimpse of each program's initiatives are Brother Reginald Slush, International Director of Bigger and Better Business, Brother Dr. Stephen Nifley, International Director of Education, Brother Chris V. Ray, International Director of Social Action, and Brother Janabu Williams, International Director of Sigma Beta Clubs.
In December 1924, Bigger and Better Business became the first international program of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. It was introduced to the fraternity at the 10th anniversary conclave held in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. At the time of adoption, Bigger and Better Business was created to place a special emphasis on working with black business. The main purpose at the time was to encourage black business to improve their acumen, efficiency, and service to the public in order to favorably compete with other businesses. Today, the program has evolved in response to the needs of the communities that we serve. Bigger and Better Business now provides focus in the following areas: Project VITA, which is a voluntary income and tax assistance. In partnership with the IRS, Phi Beta Sigma provides leadership through tax assistance to low-income, senior citizen, and others in the community. This service consists of tax preparation, education, and expertise at no cost for members of the community on fixed incomes and limited tax knowledge. We also increase the tax awareness of the community as well as our membership. Second, Project SEED, Sigma Economic Empowerment Development, is a program that emphasizes the need for increasing the economic and financial awareness of the communities and our membership. Over the years, Phi Beta Sigma has realized the need to take a leadership role in financially expanding and empowering our communities. Through partnerships with mainstream financial services firms such as Wells Fargo and Morgan Stanley, we have delivered value-added knowledge and exposure in the following areas of financial literacy: money management, credit and debt management, home ownership, risk management, insurance, retirement planning, savings and investments. We also have engaged in what we call the Sigma Business Initiatives. Phi Beta Sigma created the Sigma Business Initiative to continue and expand the emphasis on Black business in our second century of service. We have two areas of focus with the program. These programs emphasize the need and relevance of Black business in the 21st century. They are small business support. We are committed to supporting local businesses in our communities by providing services in partnership with the Small Business Administration. These services include small business startup kits, securing financing for small business, creating a business plan, and many more. Our Sigma Business Network is a database of Sigma-owned businesses that facilitates communication and awareness within the Brotherhood. We also request that our chapters promote and patronize these businesses. Professional networking is also emphasized to provide opportunities to create and build wealth. As we prepare to continue to serve and support big and better business during our second 100 years, Phi Beta Sigma is primed to deliver value-added programs to our communities. We, as Sigma men, will continue to monitor the needs of the Black business community and make the necessary adjustments to ensure our program's relevance.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Stephen Niffley Jr., and I have the honor of serving as Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated's International Director of Education. Since its founding in 1914, the men of Sigma have believed that education is an essential tool to empower marginalized communities. Over the last 103 years, Sigma has supported the educational advancement of our communities through financial support, innovative programming, and advocacy. However, there is still much work to do. Our young men of color are facing seemingly insurmountable odds each day as they attempt to avoid the school-to-prison pipeline, receive culturally competent education, and matriculate to the next stage of their educational development. Over the next 2 years, Sigma brothers from across the world will work together to position Phi Beta Sigma to be a leader in education. Our areas of focus will be the following: enhancing our adopted school program, raising $1 million in scholarships, supporting post-undergraduate educational pursuits, and pursuing grant dollars to develop and sustain innovative educational programming for our young men of color. Phi Beta Sigma believes in the potential of our youth. We will work to make the attainment of a quality education that ultimately leads to lives rooted in self-determination a constant expectation for our young people. I humbly ask for your support as we seek to empower our youth for education.
Formulated in 1934, the Social Action Program was conceived by Brother Elmo M. Anderson to focus on improving the general well-being of minority groups. The mission of the International Social Action Program is to encourage social, political, and philanthropic leadership that strengthens our respective communities and our membership by educating our fraternity members on health issues affecting them and their families, increasing visibility and sense of self-worth by and through serving in the community, providing unified efforts that address political and community issues, and addressing the awareness of the legislative process. Involve the membership in fundraising activities that support organizations that share our vision. As a brotherhood of conscious men, actively serving our communities, Social Action will continue to be the cornerstone of Phi Beta Sigma's programmatic thrusts. We will elevate Sigma wellness initiatives that focus on the mind, body, and spirit. We believe that a healthy man of Sigma is an impactful man of Sigma. The voices of Sigma men will be heard at the local, state, and national level. Through our Sigma advocacy initiatives, we will engage our elected officials at every level of government and remind them that our voices and our vote matter too. Lastly, we will continue to build upon our long-standing relationships with organizations like the American Cancer Society, March of Dimes, and St. Jude Children's Hospital. We are proud to be adding to these relationships in the coming year with a new partnership with the Sickle Cell Disease Association of America. If Sigma men are to be the change that our communities seek, then we must recognize that the time is always now.
In the early 1950s, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated became the first Greek letter organization to develop a youth auxiliary group. Under the direction of Dr. Paula L. Moore, the Sigma Beta Club was founded. While as the National Director of Education, Brother Moore was concerned about the changing needs in our communities and recognized the important role that Sigma men could play in the lives of our youth. Throughout its existence, the Sigma Beta Club has been an essential part of the total organization structure of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. The Sigma Beta Club offers men of Sigma a unique opportunity to develop wholesome values, leadership skills, social and emotional awareness in young men of color at a critical stage in their personal growth and development. The Sigma Beta Club provides a number of much needed services in the area of the community where resources are scarce. In an effort to expand the impact of the fraternity's I Am My Brother's Keeper initiative, the unveiling of the Sigma Beta Club experiential learning curriculum, Rising Thunder, took place in September 2014. Since this time, hundreds of Sigma men have taken their rightful place in the communities as mentors of our Sigma Beta Club members. As a brotherhood of conscious men actively serving our community, we can no longer sit back and wait for the change to happen in our communities. We are the iconic leaders that our community has been waiting for and the curators of the change that we have been waiting to see. Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated takes great pride in doing our part to create the next generation of leaders who accept responsibility and love the challenge.
So on this evening, we focus on understanding the trilogy of change, Phi Beta Sigma's three-pronged approach to being intentional on making a difference in the communities we serve. Facilitating tonight's conversation will be one of Tampa, Florida's leading television news anchors and reporters, and a proud member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity. He's a proud graduate of Florida A&M University in Tallahassee. He's the president of the Tampa Bay Association of Black Journalists, and is the second vice president of the Tampa chapter of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity. Rod is very active in the community as an MC, speaker, and moderator of many community events throughout Tampa Bay. He is a community leadership board of the American Diabetes Association, a member of SWOPE, Rodante Vanguard Award, selection board member, which selects outstanding student athletes throughout the Bay Area. He's a member of the FAM School of Journalism, Board of Visitors. He's a life member of FAMU National Alumni Association and a board member of the Crescent Foundation, which is a nonprofit arm of the Tampa chapter of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity. I ask you all to please join me in welcoming our moderator for this evening, Brother Rod Carter.
Good evening. How's everybody doing tonight? Good, good, good. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be here with you tonight. This is going to be a great conversation, and that's what I want it to be. That you see the mics sitting in the aisles, that means you'll have an opportunity to ask these wonderful panelists some questions. So we're going to get started. I'm glad you could all join us for Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity during the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation's 47th Annual Legislative Conference, and Still I Rise. Phi Beta Sigma's organizational moniker is a brotherhood of conscious men actively serving our communities. And you've heard a lot about the fraternity's international program directors and share their organization's various initiatives that support serving our communities. But what exactly does it really mean to be a conscious man committed to serve? So we have assembled a stellar table of some of the nation's best and brightest leaders in the areas of civil rights, Greek life, social activism, media, business, and education to engage in defining that very topic. So the purpose is singular here tonight, is to leave the Marriott Marquis with a crystal clear marching order, not only for Phi Beta Sigma, but for everyone here, every committed servant leader intent on bringing about change and making a difference in our communities. So we believe that no matter what your affiliation, you will leave with your personal to-do list on what it takes to be a conscious husband, father, servant leader, mentor, a conscious man. So let me introduce some of the panelists, all of the panelists, not some of them. We'll introduce all of the panelists here tonight. And I'll begin with the Honorable Michael E. Crystal, International President, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity, Incorporated. Michael Crystal was elected the 35th International President of Phi Beta Sigma Incorporated on Thursday, July 20th, 2017, during the 2017 conclave in Detroit, Michigan. This notable achievement is actually the culmination of a 35-year commitment to the fraternity's principles of brotherhood, scholarship, and service. Honoring accountability and dedication is a valued principle instilled in our president from a very young age. In fact, his professional career and civic engagement has benefited from these born and bred characteristics. Now, we have one small thing in common. As a teenager, he began his journey as a bagger at a local grocery store in his hometown of Grenada, Mississippi, and I did the very same thing when I turned 16. I talked somebody into giving me a job. And he worked to finance his way through school. He earned a Bachelor of Science degree in marketing from Mississippi State University. Since his initiation on April 3rd, 1982, his fraternal experience includes officer roles on all three levels, such as International Director of Bigger and Better Business, International First Vice President as well. He is currently the Vice President of Merchandising for the Kroger Company in Seattle, Washington, where he's responsible for driving $1.5 billion, as with a B, in sales with 65 QFC stores in Seattle and Portland. He's increased sales within the division by championing an improved shopping experience, high-level merchandising standards, people development, and accountability of his team to deliver the desired financial results. Now, the high-level merchandising standards and people development was instrumental in improving the shopping experience within the division as measured by Customer Tracker. He is a very skilled leader, a mentor, a trainer, and a motivator at division and store levels. Let's give him a round of applause. Y'all will know nothing. I'm nothing without a teleprompter, so if you see me looking down, that's why. Usually I have it right in my face, but I'm going to have to look down on this one. All right, the Honorable Brother Chris V. Ray, International Director of Social Action of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity. Chris Ray actually grew up in Spring Lake, North Carolina, attended Spring Lake Public Schools, and he graduated from Pine Forest Senior High School with academic honors and as a track and field All-American. In 2000, he enlisted in the U.S. Army as a computer information technology analyst, and after a couple of short years, he was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Signal Corps through the U.S. Army Officer Candidate School, and thereafter saw a couple of deployments, one to Iraq and the other to Afghanistan. In 2011, at the ripe young age of 34, he was elected the youngest mayor in his hometown's history, and he is now serving in his third term. Professionally, Mayor Ray serves as the executive director of Cumberland Health Net, which is a nonprofit organization committed to helping the uninsured population of North Carolina find primary care providers for their chronic disease. Now, he's also an adjunct professor in the criminal justice departments at the University of Mount Olive and St. Augustine's University, where he teaches classes on constitutional law, criminal law, juvenile justice, criminal courts, and cyber crimes. And he continues his military service as well as a major in the National Guard, leading a cybersecurity team of soldiers to defend the National Guard network for the Department of Defense. Basically, he's very, very busy. Mayor Ray holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration with a concentration in Information Systems, a Juris Doctorate from William and Mary Law School, and currently is pursuing an Executive MBA from Howard University. Very busy. Throughout his higher education and professional career, he's been dedicated servant leader in his community. In fact, ranked high among the list of community service organizations is Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, where he has served in various leadership roles in every level, including International Second Vice President, Southeastern Regional Director, and currently International Director of Social Action. Let's give him a round of applause. And now, honestly, a man who needs no introduction at all, and someone who is a mentor to all of us. And thank you from the bottom of our hearts for everything that you've done for this entire country. Thank you so much. The Honorable John R. Lewis, U.S. Representative, 5th District of Georgia. Often called one of the most courageous persons of the civil rights movement ever produced, John Lewis has dedicated his life to protecting human rights, securing civil liberties, and building what he calls the beloved community in America. His dedication to the highest ethical standards and moral principles has won him the admiration of many of his colleagues on both sides of the aisle in the U.S. Congress. He has been called the conscience of the U.S. Congress, and Roll Call magazine has said that John Lewis is a genuine American hero and moral leader who commands widespread respect in the chamber. He was born the son of sharecroppers on February 21st, 1940, outside of Troy, Alabama. He grew up on his family's farm, attended segregated public schools in Pike County, Alabama. In fact, as a young boy, he was inspired by the activism surrounding the Montgomery bus boycott and the words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, which he heard on radio broadcasts. In these pivotal moments, he made a decision to become a part of the civil rights movement. And ever since then, he has remained at the vanguard of progressive social movements and the human rights struggle here in the United States. He was selected to Congress in November of 1986 and has served as U.S. Representative in Georgia's 5th Congressional District ever since. He's a senior chief deputy whip for the Democratic Party in leadership in the House, a member of the House Ways and Means Committee, a member of its subcommittee on income security and family support, the ranking member of its subcommittee on oversight. John Lewis holds a BA in religion and philosophy from Fisk University and is a graduate of the American Baptist Theological Seminary, both in Nashville, Tennessee. John Lewis is the co-author of the #1 New York Times best-selling graphic novel memoir trilogy called March, written with Andrew Aiden and illustrated by Nate Powell. March, Book 2, was released in 2015 and instantly became both a New York Times and a Washington Post bestseller. The March series is used in schools across the country to teach civil rights and the civil rights movement to the next generation of young activists, and has been selected as a first-year common reading text at several colleges and universities throughout the country. He is also the author of Across That Bridge, Life Lessons and a Vision for Change, written with Brenda Jones, and winner of the 2012 NAACP Image Award for Best Literary Work Biography. Let's give him a wonderful round of applause. Our next panelist is Joseph Madison, radio talk show host and civil rights activist, Sirius XM Urban View. Joe Madison is a groundbreaking radio personality and civil rights activist who's devoted his entire career to raising awareness about issues around the world, encouraging dialogue among people of different backgrounds, and raising money to support multicultural education and institutions. He's known as the Black Eagle, and he can be heard weekday mornings on Sirius XM's Urban View. Now, while majoring in sociology at Washington University, he was an all-conference running back and a baritone soloist in the university's concert choir. You may have to get him to sing a tune. As a young adult, he worked in urban affairs at Seymour and Lundy Associates and was very active in the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. In fact, at age 24, he became the youngest executive director of the NAACP's Detroit branch and rose to that position, the position, I should say, of director of the NAACP Political Action Department. That was in 1978, before becoming a member of the national board. He uses his show as a platform for inspiring action on critical issues affecting the African American community. In fact, in 2015, he set a Guinness World Record for the longest on-air broadcast, which was 52 hours, and raised more than $200,000 for the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And we thank you for that. having just gone through Hurricane Irma and been on the air from, it seemed like a week, I understand, that's a very long time to be on the air. He's brought international attention to the struggles of the Sudanese people through 90 days of peaceful protests outside of the U.S. Embassy in D.C. and delivered survival kits to refugees and freed Sudanese people being held as slaves. In 2015, he led a campaign to secure a star on Hollywood's Walk of Fame for comedian activist, the late Dick Gregory. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you. And last, but certainly not least, Dr. Sidney A. McPhee, the president of Middle Tennessee State University. Dr. Sidney A. McPhee, the 10th president of Middle Tennessee State University, has presided over one of the most remarkable periods of growth and progress at the university. In fact, since its appointment in 2001, the university has been successful in completing more than $800 million in improvements in academic, athletic, and campus facilities. And that includes the 250,000 square foot, $147 million science building, which opened in August of 2015, and a $25 million renovation of Weiser, Patton, and Davis science buildings as well. Since his arrival at MTSU, they've been very successful in raising admission standards, which resulted in an increase in enrollment of high-ability students. In fact, Dr. McPhee has overseen the addition of over 35 undergraduate and graduate programs at the university, 2 colleges, and 16 institutes and centers. In recent years, the university has increased its international undergraduate and graduate student enrollment, expanded its study abroad and cultural opportunities, and developed research collaboration with international partners as well. MT enrolls more international students than any other university in the state of Tennessee and boasts 38 partnerships in 17 different countries. A book of Mr. McPhee's photographic essays, China Through the Eyes of an American University President, published in July of 2012, was sponsored by the Handband, and I hope I said that right, was I close? Handband Confucius Institute, and released internationally. Let's give him a round of applause as well. Let's give the entire panel a round of applause, and we have some great questions tonight. All right, I'm going to begin with President Crystal. The first question is going to be for you. A brotherhood of conscious men actively serving our communities. That's a theme for Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. How does this banner represent the focus of this organization in a tangible form?
Yeah, thanks for the question, and certainly thanks for all of you being here. As I reflect on that question, I reflect on our theme, I'm reminded of how we got here. And you know, when we started thinking about our campaign and started thinking about, you know, what would we define as the mission and the focus for the fraternity, I thought it would be an opportunity for us to go and define who we are. So often when we think about African American men, there's a tremendous amount of challenges that we face, whether it's health disparities, whether it's economic disparities, mass incarceration, just so many things that has a negative impact on us. And so thusly, a story is being told about us. I thought it'd be an opportunity for us to take our story and to define our story. And then we started thinking about how could we incorporate our theme into what it is that Phi Beta Sigma represented. And so as we looked at a brotherhood of conscious men, it gave us this unique opportunity to go back to our origin, and that was brotherhood. How do we start celebrating the African American male? And how do we do that internally? And then we started thinking about conscious. When you define conscious, you have to be aware of what's going on. That's what education is. And so I incorporated that into our theme. And then when you think about brotherhood of conscious men actively serving our community, the only way we can play a major role in actively serving our community is we first have to take care of ourselves. And so we started to define that. And so we said, unequivocally, we would be conscious husbands. We'd be conscious fathers. We would be conscious professionals. And as we defined that, we started expanding even more to start looking now, what does that look like tangibly, to get to your question? You think about our Sigma Beta Club, and now I'm going to critique the fraternity. We've had a Sigma Beta Club for an extended amount of time. We often hear all the historical data that gives us insight in respect to how our young African American males are having struggles within life. But yet we as an organization, in my opinion, we weren't doing a very intentional job toward developing that. And so we said very intentionally that we would take the Sigma Beta Club off the corner of our desk and that we would put it in the centerpiece. It would be our singular primary programmatic focus. We would be very intentional on developing African American men. We're going to own that. And so if we're really going to own that piece, then we have an opportunity to make a long-term impact within our community because we start developing and mentoring them at a very young age. We've been intentional about recruiting them to join our fraternity, so thusly we get them as collegiates in developing and mentoring them. And then we have an opportunity to develop and mentor them as young alumni. If we take them from that very young age and being intentional about developing them as collegiates and then very intentional about developing them as young alumni, all of a sudden, not only do we make a huge impact within the African American community, thusly preparing them for the game of life, but we also have a huge impact within the broader community as well. And so we're going to take those negative situations and we're going to turn them. And we're going to define as our focus those challenges. Phi Beta Sigma is going to be intentional on focusing on them. And that's how we're coming with our theme, a brotherhood of conscious men actively serving our community. And thus we'll have a positive impact within the community as a whole.
And that leads right into the second question. And anyone, please feel free to jump in to answer this question. The centerpiece of Phi Beta Sigma's programmatic focus starts with what is termed as the organization's trilogy of change within the African American community, and that the first trilogy or focus will be impacting the youth. What is the most critical issue that faces our youth today that servant leaders must give serious attention to immediately? And anyone, please jump in.
Oh, I'll take this. One of the things that, and I remember the time period when I ran for mayor, you know, one of the things that a lot of the young people in our community always said to me was, you know, my issues, I have issues too. And don't look at, you know, what we're dealing with through your eyes. Take some time to come and, you know, listen to what we're dealing with, because what we're going through today may not be exactly what you went through, you know, X amount of time ago, but we still have our own challenges and issues, and it's serious. And so I think that sometimes a lot of young people believes that we aren't, that we don't take them as seriously as they should be. And so I think one of the things that we have to do a better job of is, as a community and as just individuals who have lived the game of life, sometimes we just need to just listen. You know, I know that a lot of us, we're quick to want to open our mouth and say, well, this is what you need to do. But sometimes if you just take some time and just listen to young people, you can actually learn more from them, because, you know, you are removed from being 15 and 16 years old and 17. You're removed from there. And so I think one of the things we have to do a better job of is just having listening sessions, and that's one of the things we did in our community, is just have listening sessions with young people just to hear, what is it that you want to see your community look like? You know, how do you feel about the streets? How do you feel about getting ready to graduate from high school? What are the stresses that you feel about getting ready to be on your own? You'd be amazed at the stress that they're under, and that maybe some of us forgot, because now we have, you know, our degrees, and but you know, we were stressed out too when we were 17. Shucks, I'm stressed out right now. But we got to listen to our young people more, and in the words of the president, you have to be intentional. You know, so have some listening sessions and listening forums for just young people.
Is there one issue, though, in your mind, or anyone can answer, that stands out as the number one most pressing issue that faces our youth today above anything else?
I think it's important that we see that all of our young people, all of our children, receive the best possible education. Education is the key, the great equalizer. When I was growing up on that farm in rural Alabama, sometime I would hide under the front porch and wait for the school bus to come up the hill and run off and slip off to school. My mother and father wanted me to stay home and work in the field. But when I was in elementary school, I had a teacher who said, "Read, my child, read." And I tried to read everything. And sometime I'd be out there, Joe, working in the field, in the hot sun. My mother would say, "Boy, you're falling behind. You need to catch up." And I would say, "This is hard work." and she would say, "Hard work never killed anybody." I said, "Well, it's about to kill me." So I learned that if you believe in something, you should share it with your children and with other young people. I spent a great deal of time visiting schools, elementary school, middle school, high school, colleges, talking to young people and listening to young people. We learn a great deal. I see in many cities, in the city that I come from time to time, young men of color, walking around with their pants down. And I just want to say, boy, pull up your pants. And I had a colleague from LA, told me one day she was on the way to the beauty shop. And there was a young guy had his pants down. And she said, son, pull up your pants. Pull them up for Barack Obama. And the guy grabbed his pants. Do whatever it takes. Whatever it takes to get our children to learn, to believe in a sense of dignity and have a sense of pride. The first time I got arrested, on February the 27th, 1960, we heard that we might be arrested a few days earlier. I wanted to look clean. I wanted to look fresh. I wanted to look sharp. So I went to a used men's store in downtown Nashville, and Chris, I bought a suit, a used suit. A vest came with it. You know how much I paid for it? $5.
Yeah.
If I had that suit today, I probably could sell it on eBay for a lot of money. So do whatever it takes.
Dr. McPhee, did you want to weigh in on that? I think it's on.
Yes, I would like to. First, let me say how thrilled I am to be here. I'm honored to be among such distinguished brothers and also sisters. It's indeed a pleasure. My thought is the word discipline. Discipline and focus. I have the opportunity throughout my career, I've been a president now for 17 years at the same institution, to get a little sense of the things that make people successful. You don't have to be the smartest. In fact, I wasn't the smartest guy in my class, but discipline and what I call stickability. I don't think you're going to find that in the dictionary. I think I need to patent that, Honorable John Lewis. But the one thing that will make this world a better place and our young people cut across is discipline and have a focus and stick with it, stickability.
Mr. Madison, did you want to weigh in as well?
Education, and I'll stick with that theme, and the reason is if you go by history, one of the first institutions that was created after the Civil War was were colleges for ex-slaves. That was the very first institution. If you look at the founding dates of most colleges, Howard, Wilberforce, the list goes on, it's usually 1865, 1867. So education clearly was the #1 issue of newly freed slaves, whether it was education in the arts or the science or in farming, but it was education. Let's fast forward to 21st century. Education, one of the things I'm very fond of saying in my studio, I have a sign along with the plaque that tells everybody I'm also a member of Phi Beta Sigma that sits in the studio. Matter of fact, somebody I walked in today and said, you're going to have to start calling yourself the Blue Eagle. That ain't going to happen. But I had a hard enough time with the Black Eagle. But is that education is the new currency of the 21st century. I mean, write that down. It is the new currency of the 21st century. When you look at folks that are trying to get to this country, trying to get into certain European countries, it is usually the undereducated who are just trying to find any way to live. And the person who has the most education is the person that can write their check in the 21st century. Number two, you must have not only an educated child, but you have to have an educated community. And what do I mean by that? When I was growing up, if the wino saw you playing hooky, it would chastise, the wino would chastise you and tell you to get your behind in school, or you'll end up like I am. And so you take education out of the walls of a school. The other thing is activism. Parents have to be seen. Fraternities, sororities have to be seen actively campaigning as it relates to public policy for education. And so we talk about, and you're right, you do listen to what young people say. I mean, there's no question about that. I'd be crazy to suggest that you don't. But young people really watch us. And when they see us advocating on the Hill, advocating in City Hall for improved public education, they then understand that this must be significant. This must be important because people are raising hell about getting good education. And so I would say to the brothers of Phi Beta Sigma that you have to be activists. And as it relates to public policy and education, you must be activists because it will, and you'll hear people, particularly on the show, they'll talk about, oh, it all starts in the home. I've had teachers call me and tell me, I can't do anything about a parent in the house, but when I've got that child in my classroom, that's when I'm in charge. But the reality is, and I'll close by saying, it's never all personal responsibility, or is it all public policy? It's always a combination of both. And we have to impact public policy. It makes no sense to honor John Lewis, to brag about the members of Congress that we have, if we don't fight with them as it relates to public policy and get money into these public schools and stop this foolishness that because personal responsibility, oh, look at them, they don't, and this is how members of Congress work. They don't deserve funding for public schools because they're killing each other. They're doing this. They aren't educated, they're not smart enough, they're a bunch of thugs. And if we allow that kind of language to permeate through our community and not recognize that they use that language to really impact public policy, you don't deserve funding increase. Yeah. We have to take charge of our language. And that's what young people are watching. So you listen to them, but let me be honest with you. They're watching us. They're really watching us.
I want to stick with education for just a minute. Dr. McPhee, I'd like you to answer this. How do those of us who are committed to supporting young men in the community make a real, tangible difference when it comes to education? What can we do?
Getting involved, and I like the term as an academician. When I got the topic, obviously I went and I did some research. And one of the articles I read was from Forbes magazine, the 2015 edition, that talks about intentionality, that when you serve, you show up not once, not twice, but every time that you are needed in that group. I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, I was part of the 100 Black Men, and we developed a mentoring program for African American youth in the Louisville area, and we solicited and got a few folks to join. And while the intention was good, the fact that they only came once or twice, or by the third month they dropped out, they actually did more damage to the young men that we were trying to mentor, because they did not stick with it. They did not show the passion. They did not show that they really know and understand what they are going through, and then work through those issues. So, yeah, education is important, but we have to be role models. And we have to make sure that we are intentional and that we show up every time as it relates to working with young people.
Discipline, focus, consistency. So our nation is at a critical place when we talk about the social well-being of communities, especially communities of color, African Americans. The third trilogy of change places attention on social issues that impact those very unique communities that we serve. Economic disparities, criminal justice reform, law enforcement, gun control, health disparities are just a few that we can name. How can we in our communities, in our commitment to serve our communities, affect the financial well-being of the communities and the businesses that we serve? And I'll open that up to whomever wants to take it.
One of the things that I think that we have to have an opportunities to do is that when you get a chance to sit in a position of influence, you got to use it. You don't have to be a mayor, you don't have to be a president or a congressman of an organization. Whenever you get a chance to serve in a position of influence, do it. When I first got the chance to serve as mayor of my city, the first law we passed, the first bill we came through, and they all looked at me like I was crazy, was ban the box. And for a lot of people, they didn't know in the town hall, well, what is ban the box? And I had to break it down for them and say that, you know, when a man applies for a job, and I specifically meant a man, that has a criminal background record, normally when he checks that box on the job application, we kind of say, well, we're going to go on and put that to the side. And then we're going to move on to the next application. That's the truth. So I told my HR folks, we're going to take that off. And what we're going to do is that we're going to look for individuals, and we're going to first get them through the process. Now, I'm not saying that we're not going to go ahead on and do a background check eventually, because that's important, but we want to make sure we give everybody a fighting chance. But by just doing that simple gesture, we were able to employ X amount of individuals that started working. What does that mean? That means that that brother was able to pay his child support. By him paying his child support means his baby mama let him see his kid. His kid was now happy and now started performing well in school. Kid performs well in school, kid doesn't drop out of school. Kid don't drop out of school, kid don't hang on my block. Kid don't hang on my block, that means that the property value goes up. Property value goes up, that means that I get tax base. Tax base means that I can now go ahead on and pave more roads. And that all because I gave a man a job. And so what we have to do as leaders is understand the criticalness of no matter where you serve at, you have to be able to make sure that you use your position to influence some kind of economic change so that individuals get a chance to take care of their families. All a man wants to do is take care of his family. Now, he may have messed up when he was young, and if you are sitting in a position of influence and you don't know that, then you don't need to be sitting in the position that you're in right now. Sir, do it when you can.
I would, and I'll speak as an activist. I'm not a journalist. I like to say I'm radioactive. And the reason I say that, I spend 4 hours people call, talk. What's John Lewis going to do? What's Al Sharpton going to do? What's this person going to do? And then after all the talking's done, Mayor, I always ask this question. What are you going to do about it?
What you going to do?
Because, and here's what I always get, crickets. It just freezes people. They go, well, you know, so-and-so. No, I know. The question is, what are you going to do about it? And the reason I ask that question is everybody can do something. And that's, in essence, what the mayor was saying, no matter what your position is. I mean, you know, my God, nobody asked, Rosa Parks didn't get permission to sit on that bus. She was a seamstress. We forget that, you know, that people made a decision to do something. And so I will also add another thing, and it was something that the late Dr. Ron Walters reminded some students when he lectured at Fisk University. Yes, I know you are. Walter was a graduate of Fisk. That's right. That's right. Yeah, I thought you said you were. Oh, okay. Huh? You went? I thought you went to Fisk. Yeah, okay. All right. You just didn't graduate. I don't get a chance to mess with him too often. But one of the things he said, a student asked him, he said, look, there's a difference between a moment and a movement. And a student said, what's the difference? And he said one word, sacrifice. All movements require sacrifice. And I think that's what we don't recognize when we see these movements. Getting in a car, you got to tell young people, getting in a car, going to a demonstration, spending a day at a demonstration, holding a sign, getting back in the car, and going to, you know, is not a movement. That's right. That's it. When these folks sacrificed, it was their lives, their marriage, their education. You know, most folks don't recognize that the sit-ins in North Carolina, do you know, were all freshmen? And all of them were kicked out of school by the president of that university.
I wasn't that president.
No, you weren't. That's amazing. You're touching a lot of toes here. And that's right. That's right. The other thing, and this goes when you said ban the box. Let me give the fraternity another issue that just came up this morning with Kamala Harris. And you guys have got to write a position. You got to take a position on this. I did not realize this. There are 485,000 people in jail as we speak can't make bail. They can't make bail. 485,000. And she has legislation, by the way, that has bipartisan support that allows people not to have to, that their release would be based on their performance, their record, and not a bail. So a $20,000 bail is pretty much average, but as you talk about a poor person, you go around the corner to the bail bondsman, that's $2,000 for the most part, that somebody probably has to pawn something, they don't get the money back, and who gets out of jail? Rich people. Who stays in jail? Poor people. And that legislation is now in the form of a bill. And once again, this is the position that you got to take, and it's right along with the ban the box, because once again, you can't, and by the way, if you're in jail 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe a year, you want to talk about wondering if you got a job, because even if you make the bail, you don't know if your job is going to be there because you haven't been on it. I bring up again that because I think what's lacking is activism. I think we have to be active. I was even prepared to come here and tell Phi Beta Sigma that y'all need to put a resolution to impeach Trump. And the reason I say that is because Maxine Waters was on my show, and she jumped all over fraternities, sororities, churches, religious organizations, didn't she? And she said, look, she shouldn't be the only one that's talking about impeaching this man. You know, all of us ought to be with organizations. Now, I don't know what y'all's 501c3 is and all that, but I will tell you one thing. If you're going to be part of the movement, you got to make a sacrifice. Yeah, I'll applaud on that one. That's all, yeah.
Yeah, real quiet up in there.
You got to make a sacrifice.
Big sacrifice, man.
I would like to build on that point. You were very articulate in communicating the importance of what I would call checking your motivation for why and what you do. Connect to this notion of being a change agent. And when you are a change agent, it's not because you want to have your picture in the newspaper on channel 4 or 5, whatever. 8. It is. You're doing it for the right reason. And you have to ask yourself, who benefits? Who is benefiting from these efforts? And I think when you wrap up all that is said, sticking with it. We love to start things and get the headline and feel good about it.
That's right.
And then 2-3 months later, can't find them. And so to be an effective change agent, you really have to know yourself. You also have to be transparent, because one thing young people can pick up on is when you faking it.
Very true.
When you are not really into what you said you are into in helping those young people. And so self-knowledge, self-actualization, and being comfortable within yourself, and knowing the reason you are engaged, that really makes a difference.
I think, brother, that is a very good point. I think we all have to come to that point where we're willing to be activists, to get engaged. And you're right. You have to be persistent and consistent. And you have to come to that point where you said, this may get me fined. I may be beaten up, thrown in jail. My house may be bombed. But it was in Nashville, our students from Fisk University and Tennessee State, Vanderbilt and Meharry, American Baptist, we came together. We had a teacher named James Lawson. He was on a panel earlier today. He taught us. He drilled within us that we could do it. And we did it.
You stuck with it.
We stuck with it. Day in and day out. And that's what we did on the Freedom Ride. Just think, in 1961, the same year that President Barack Obama was born, in this city, the nation's capital, black people and white people can be seated together on a Greyhound or Trailway bus, leaving the nation's capital to travel through Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi. But more than 400 of us were arrested and went to jail. We did it. And today, our young people are much better educated.
That's right.
They have more information,
more resources.
all these resources. And we need them now to get out there and push. If not, people try to take us back.
And they don't give up.
And what happened in Virginia, that was poison.
You know, when I think about your question around what tangible things we could do to combat some of the challenges, one of the things we've defined as an opportunity for us is Sigma Wellness. focusing on issues that have a positive impact on the African American male. And as we think about that, we're saying we want to partner with the National Medical Association. Hey, tell us what you know, health professionals, to be the highest indexed opportunities for the African American male. Give us that and be specific on that. And as you give that to us, now give us an opportunity to go out and partner with other organizations to raise the awareness and profile on that. One of the things that Brother Ray and I are talking about in 2018, imagine this, visualize this. We're having health fairs not just in one community, but we're doing that throughout the United States, partnering with our chapters, in partnership with the National Medical Association, where we're saying to the community, we know these to be the health disparities that's impacting the African American male, and we're profiling that in the community. We're doing that with the National Dental Association. Many of us, I have a small son, but I also have a 22-year-old son. We live in Seattle, Washington. My oldest son is a senior at the University of Arkansas. We had a chance to live in Atlanta, Georgia. He traveled from the University of Arkansas all the way to Atlanta, went through 4 states. So we think about the talk. We had the talk. But let's go deeper than just the talk. Where's the opportunity that we can partner with the African American Police Association, NOBLE, so that we can work in partnership with that group to give us great insight and knowledge on how we can share it with the community on how we can have a working relationship with the police department. And so I think as we continue to focus on issues that impact the African American community, I think we have to be intentional about where they are. Now, how do we work in collaboration to address them? Because, again, and I say this with respect, I never want to be the victim. I come from a single home. If my father was to walk through that door right now, he'd have to introduce himself and say, "Hi, Michael, I'm your dad." And so with all of the challenges I've had in my life, I've never looked at them to be, Michael, success for you is being invisible because of this. So I've looked at it, now I know what my odds are, now how do I overcome those? And I say that to my fraternity and to my fraternity brothers, we know what our issues are, now what are we going to do to be intentional about addressing them? And I've learned in many cases, there are many organizations out there doing the work. Now how do we collaborate with those organizations to address them? And I've learned in many cases, you can achieve a lot in partnership. And so we're going to partner and we're going to be definitive. And I think as we think of all the isms and challenges we have, and we have many of them, I think we got to define what it is we want to make an impact, be intentional about doing so, and put strategies around them and measure them. I love your comment, Dr. McPhee. Nothing frustrates me the most than to sit down and define we're going to do something, and 3 weeks later we're looking around the table saying, now what was that? That really bothers me. So yes, let's define it. Let's put strategies in place that will deliver the results we're seeking, and let's measure the outcome, because I want to know the impact that we're having.
I want to close with this as we move on to the next question. I think that we have to be reminded, and it's been said throughout this whole process here, is that this is hard work. This is hard work. Hard work that you have to consistently be with. I mean, and my good brother said it, this is hard work. And I don't even know how, I don't even know what else. There was a program that we started, and I keep on saying the programs that we did in my community, because I want you guys to understand that a lot of this stuff starts at the local level. Absolutely. If you don't know who your mayor is or your city council person is right now, and you don't know what district you live in, shame on you. Because a lot of the stuff that's impacting our local communities starts with you not knowing who is educating your kids or educating or dealing with the policies that impact you on a daily basis. We started this initiative called Read with the Mayor for an Hour. And I challenged the people in my community and a lot of these volunteer organizations to just give me 1 hour. 1 hour a week to just come and just read with a child. And that goes back to the consistency that you talked about. Not giving up, not, every week just come and read to these kids. And we took 3 of our elementary schools and we did this for a whole year. Now in my community we had 3 underperforming schools. at that time period. The following year, one of our elementary schools raised their reading scores by 50 points. Wow. All because a group of people came and read to children for an hour. And they stuck with it. If you can't give an hour to a child, then what are you doing? Give up your lunch hour. Because I know you go by, I know when you're going by Sweet Green or wherever you're going by or swinging through to get something to eat, I know you pass a school, give them an hour. Just say, I want to come in here, I want to read with a child for an hour. Watch what happens to that one child. And if you're not reading to them, let them read to you. And imagine if a group of people just do that and then come back and find out what the measurable outcomes are. Just give them an hour. Hard work, stick with it.
I have one final question for each of you, and each of you to answer. Please offer your best definition of a conscious man committed to serve. President Crystal, I'll start on your end.
Sure. I think commitment is number one. Defining expectations, I would say, would be number two. I would say that with everything that takes a committed and focused area that's going to deliver the results that we're seeking. For me, when we started the whole conversation around a Brotherhood of Conscious Men, we had a vision. And as we had the vision, we had some very strategic approaches that we wanted to adopt and that we wanted to put in place. And the three that really resonated with me was when I talked a few seconds ago about Sigma Wellness. We wanted to be intentional in defining what that looked like. And as we defined it, we knew we wanted to go out and get resources to help support it. And every time we came up with an issue, we saw that there was somebody out there driving that. So how could we collaborate with them? And then as we got further and further into that conversation, I started thinking about the Sigma Beta Club, Brother Thomas. And as I said earlier, it's not a critique on the fraternity, I'm just being honest. It was over there. And it was over there for way too long for this new president. And so I said, let's bring that to the middle. And not that we're taking anything away from our other three programs, but if we're being very intentional about changing our community, then I said it starts with our youth. And we have a program. Wow, how interesting that. We have a program that focuses on our youth, but it's over there. We have over 500 chapters, and again, honestly, just works for me. We had a disproportionate amount of our chapters that just wasn't necessarily engaged in that. So how can we really make that long-term impact? And so I said to Janabu, who has moved on me, but he's in here somewhere, there he is. I said to Janabu, again, looking where the success is, I looked at Chi Sigma chapter in New Jersey, a model chapter for our Sigma Beta Club. Everything that our Sigma Beta Club represent, they were doing that. So I went and talked to him. And I said, I want you to bring that energy, that excitement, and those measurable outcomes. I want you to bring that to us on a national scale. And let's do it in partnership with our Sigma Beta Club Foundation. And I'm challenging our chapters to embrace the Sigma Beta Club. Why? Because if we make the impact with our young people now, our Phi Beta Sigma, as we know and love, will be sustained and have a long-term sustainability in the future. And so, but it starts here. And so when I think about how would I define a Brotherhood of Conscious Men, I'm starting with being definitive on who we are, not allowing the media to do it, and then I'm saying we're going to work with our Sigma Beta Club to be the centerpiece of our programmatic focus area. And the fraternity has heard me talk about that in my sleep, and before I come out of office, it's going to be real.
When I think about the question, and then just taking from where President Crystal just mentioned, a conscious man is someone who recognizes the importance of pouring into the next generation. That's a conscious man. A lot of people see the finished product. I'm a mayor, got all these things that he read about. But believe it or not, there were men in this room that recognized, that poured into me long before I was the mayor of a city. A conscious man is someone who literally pours into the next generation. And not because you want to. I remember when I first met Brother Lewis in 2003. And I only knew a little bit about him. I didn't know much about him. But I remember we spent, and he probably don't remember this, but we spent some time, I picked him up from the airport in 2003 at the Memphis Conclave, and I was assigned to him. And we spent that whole weekend, just about that whole week together, and I was making sure that, which I did a poor job of, people mobbing him. The whole time.
That he remembers.
But I remember during the time period, he said to me, "Young brother, you're going to run for office one day." And I looked at him and I was like, "No, I'm not." He said, "Yes, you are, and when you do, I'll be there." And I remember this was in 2003, and my life went in all these different directions. And I remember in 2011, when I called him finally and told him that I was going to run for office, he said, "I know you would one day." And he said, "When do I show up?" And he came and he campaigned with me. And that's because he poured into me. And so as we talk about what a conscious man is, it's someone who recognizes, I know that I'm one of the best in my generation. I recognize that. But I'm one of the best in my generation because there are a group of men in here who poured into me. And so I can sit here on this stage and I can say what I can say and I can do what I can do because a group of conscious men poured into me. And we have a responsibility to pour into the next generation. That's why I am just excited about this president and this administration as we get prepared to pour into our Sigma Betas. Because I tell you, Sigma is coming. And if you don't know, you better get ready. Because we are about to be about this life. Y'all better stay woke. You better stay woke. Come on, Brother Lewis. Go. I'm good. I'm done. I'm done.
He hangs around with the young people.
Brother President, I agree with you. Young people can lead. Young people can lead. They're smart.
Yes, sir.
They're smarter than we think they are. Yes. They led in Birmingham. They led in Selma. It was the Children Crusade. And those of us that are a little older, but you're much younger than I am, we have to project that image of being what I like to call a spark plug. You know, a spark plug. Continue to burn. You understand what I'm saying? Yes, sir. And not a firecracker. A firecracker just shoot off.
That's right.
Burn out. But the plug continued to go and go and go. In a sense, as brothers, we have to be headlights and not taillights. That's right. That's we have to lead the way. And we can do it. We can do it under your leadership. Thank you.
I am absolutely honored to be, even though it was an honorary position, member of this fraternity. I ran from the Alphas as far as I could get. Q's didn't even come after me. And I wasn't even thinking about the Kappas. And now I'm, 60 years old, and I'm a member of a fraternity. And there's a reason. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. No, 60 ain't what it used to be. Right? Yeah, it's not what it used to. I tell my son that all the time. I got more energy than he has. And when you look at the men who are part of history, who are part of this, and when I look at the A. Philip Randolphs and the folk who are part of this, and I look out in this audience and I see, I just sometimes wish that some of the folk you have to deal with on Capitol Hill could just be a fly on the wall and see the sophistication, the intelligence, and the sincerity that we sit here and the issues that we talk about. So let me answer the question directly by saying, first of all, thank you for inviting me. Secondly, I get up at 3:30 in the morning. I am past my bedtime, but I would stay awake for Sigma any day. Any day. And so it's about consciousness. And you said it in the end, you may not have realized it. You have to be awake to be conscious. Sleep people aren't conscious. And I think we've just been asleep too long. And so the young people are right, stay woke. Now, first of all, before you can stay woke, you got to wake up. You understand? So that's number one. So here's what I think, and this is my opinion about being a conscious man. And I say this almost every day. In America, we are culturally conditioned to believe that white is superior, black is inferior, and the manifestation of that cultural conditioning is that black people are undervalued, underestimated, and marginalized. We must be consciously ready to change how we are culturally conditioned. You have black folk who are culturally conditioned to believe in their own inferiority. And so a conscious man or woman is one who culturally conditions themselves to believe that they will never be undervalued, never be underestimated, and never be marginalized. That's a conscious person.
You know, I have been in higher education now almost 40 years, and as I mentioned, I've been a president for 17, and I've served on a lot of panels. Too many. One of the challenges, however, when you serve on a panel with very distinguished and intelligent men and people, and you the last person to answer that question, they have said everything that I had on my list to say. So I'm going to take the liberty, Mr. Moderator, with your permission, to leave one other message with this group as it relates to being a conscious man and helping young people. We tend to not deal with this issue, and that is, we need to teach our young people how to deal with failure, how to deal with negativity, and how to respond to the many people who always tell them what they can't do. Now let me give you a personal example. I graduated from Prairie View A&M University, and this is not about Sidney McPhee. I want to make a point here. Summa cum laude. Went to the University of Miami in Coral Gables, a predominantly white institution, private institution, prestigious institution. Got my master's, 4.0. Then I applied for my doctorate, my PhD at Oklahoma State University. Got married that summer. My wife drove from Houston to Stillwater, Oklahoma. You don't end up in Stillwater. You have to be on destination there.
You're going there.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
You're on the way. You're on your way there.
And so I was applying for the PhD in psychology and counseling psych. Went to the department chair, put my application, because you had to do an interview. True story. He looked at me and he said, "Young man, you don't have the ability to finish up the PhD in this program." Yes. My whole world turned upside down because I had just left my job as a high school counselor in the Bahamas in Nassau. Just had married this beautiful young lady. We've been married now 37 years, and brought her from Houston to Stillwater, Oklahoma. And here it is. This department chair tells me, really, that I'm dumb, that I just don't. And we all know the only reason he told me that, because they had never had an African American or a black person finish that program. So I was so confused. The longest walk was from his office to my apartment. And they had already given me an apartment on campus, Marriott Student Housing. And the minute I opened the door, my wife said, something is wrong. Tell me how did it go? And I told her, and I was about ready to give up, to be honest with you. I was ready to, because he just crushed me. And Liz McPhee, that's the name of my wife, Elizabeth, she looked at me, she said, you're going to go back and you're going to tell him how you're going to get that doctorate degree. Now this is about 40 years ago, 40, 41, 43. And I did that. The next day, I went back and I told him, I said, give me a chance. Give me the opportunity to take a semester. You tell me the number of classes, you tell me what the grades I need to make, and if I make these grades, I will be admitted in this program. He agreed to do that. And guess what kind of courses he put me in? Statistics.
Yeah.
Short and long of it, I ended up getting a 4.0, got admitted to the program, in 2.5 years got my doctorate degree, and guess what? Was hired at Oklahoma State as a professor and spent 8 years at Oklahoma State University as a professor in the department where that chair told me that I couldn't make it.
Come on, God.
Now, as I always tell a story to young people that I talk with and give speeches and motivation. And what I tell them, I say, look, because they think you're a doctorate, you're a president of a big university. And I say, yes, I'm a president of the historically white institution in Tennessee, a red state, deep red state. And I say, yes, I am responsible for 3,000 employees at my university. And yes, my budget is over $500 million a year, annually. And yes, the economic impact of my university in the Middle Tennessee area is $1.2 billion annually, and we generate over 800 jobs. It's really. So I tell them, if I can do that, and I've been told that I couldn't, guess what you can do? Guess what you could do? So the message, most great leaders have had massive failures in their lives. And they pick themselves up, pull their boots and socks and whatever they have on up, and they continue on. And nobody tell them and convince them what they can't do. Right. That is a message we need to give to our young people.
We want to give you an opportunity to ask questions. If you have a question, there are 2 mics right here at the front in each aisle. If you would, just stand up, head to the mic, and then propose your question. Everybody who wants to ask a question, just come on down. It's like the price is right. Just come on down.
Good evening to everyone on the panel and to my brothers and sisters. My name is Reverend Lamont Granby. I am a member of Beta Psi Sigma chapter in New York. I came from Epsilon Kappa and University of Pittsburgh. I stand here because I have done a lot of mentoring as far as for my programs from church and in the community. And I heard the words clear about being from a moment to a movement. And in the church, I think of the same idea of people who join the church out of emotion, but not out of devotion. And what I'm charging for all the brothers when we leave from here, and also the sisters too, is that we should all take charge in mentoring someone. And the young people, as was stated earlier, are very clear that they can weed out the person who is really sincere, and they know, right, their radar is on point. And we have to show them that they should be prospects and not suspects, and just talk to them. So my challenge and my question to the panel is, we go out from here as motivated for the moment, but how can we maintain connected with each other and harness programs from someone else's viewpoint or vantage point so we can keep this going? I am proud to say that I'm a legacy. My father is frat, my son is frat. I was raised on the 12-inch rule. And I didn't know when I was a little kid about coming in the classroom late, you know, or checking my money as far as for my change, all those little things from the 12-inch rule. My dad was teaching me ever since I was a little kid. So I thank God for Phi Beta Sigma and making me the man that I am.
Just check your email.
Did you all get the question? How do you motivate? How do you keep someone motivated?
How do you stay motivated after leaving a place after you done got all this good motivation?
Right.
You know, how do you stay motivated? You know, and that's a hard question, because I think that if you ain't already motivated by the work that's out there, there's nothing that we can say or do, right? I think that when you come to panels like this, you get reminded of the work, and that the work is possible, but that the work is necessary. And if you ain't already built to do this, you ain't gonna do it. And so I think that you don't really need much motivation from us. What you need to be, if it ain't already inside of you, then what you have to do is continue to surround yourself with the people that are doing this kind of work. If you're around brothers who ain't about doing this kind of service, then you ain't gonna want to do this kind of service, because they tired and then you tired. But if you surround yourself with brothers who ain't tired, but look, this is my crew. So I can't get tired. So you got to make sure that the brothers that you surround yourself with, that they're just not tired brothers.
One quick advice to this, because I understand your question too, and obviously because of my position, I'm in a lot of circles. And what I see others do that we don't do after these kinds of meetings, they network.
That's right.
That's right.
They change cards, they call each other up, and they do it to me. I mean, every time I'm in do a speech or on a panel, the next day or the next week, I get a zillion emails from folks in the audience wanting to know more. So networking, making sure that you connect with folks will be helpful.
We want to try to get as many questions in as possible, so let's make sure, excuse me, that we keep the questions as concise as we can. Go ahead, sir.
To make it short, I'm a preacher as well.
I understand.
Don't start there.
Let me get a chair.
I've heard a lot of good things here, and I heard that there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. I've had the experience of working with youth for many of years, and one of the things that I found is that we talk about educating the kid, but we do not do anything to educate the parents, because most of the kids at this day and time are sometimes smarter than the parents. And then I also heard a lot of things from the panel up there, and there's many pieces to this puzzle, and we haven't figured out how to put it together. And I've been in several meetings of this kind, social meetings. If we can be profiled from the 3rd grade of how many of us are going to jail, how come we can't start teaching our people policy? Policy is the foundation in which the laws stand upon, and by the time we get to interact or get ready to rally people together, it's too late, because the policy has already been set or the laws have already been established. And the last thing I want to say is, once we as a people become successful, we have a tendency to forget where we come from because subconsciously we move out of our neighborhoods and the places that we grow up. We are not like them. We don't send no money back. We act just like they do about the people that are still there. What are we going to do as informed people to change that mindset?
Thank you, sir. So, what are we going to do as informed people to change that mindset?
That was a question. I'm going to let you anybody. No. Well, okay, Brother President.
I would yield to you, sir.
Really?
That's my homeboy, so where's Robert?
One of y'all better answer this question.
What was the question?
What do we do as informed people to change the mindset of others? I'd actually written a similar question down earlier that I was going to ask, which is, how do you get people to buy in? How do you get brothers and sisters focused and motivated to act and to be conscious men?
Well, I think when you said, well, we're focused on the young people, but what about the parents? I think that you first got to know yourself. Parents are not my ministry. And I think that there are some people who got to know who can deal with adults. I'm not good with adults. I'm just going to be honest. I'm just not good with them. And so I think that we have to find brothers and sisters who are good with adults to really be able to wrap around and say, look, mother, father, person that's older, that's acting a fool, these are the things that you need to do. If we can focus more on young people, then think about these young people become parents. But the problem is, and it goes back to one of our points, is that there's just not enough of us mentoring young people. So you got all these generations. Look, I grew up in the streets of Spring Lake, and and a lot of folks, they make fun. They're like, oh, the small town, blah blah. Let me tell you, drugs in Spring Lake is just like drugs in New York. It still hurts and breaks up families. And the only difference between me and the guys that I was running the streets with was my grandmother, who said that I had to be in the house when the street lights came on, and that was real. That was real. She locked me out the house one time. I was homeless for like 50 minutes, but I was still homeless. But I learned a valuable lesson. There. So I say all that to say that, if we can get more mentored, more people just pouring into young people, they turn into adults. And for the adults right now that are lost in the sauce, we got to find people who that's their ministry.
I think the mayor has a very good point. That's an old saying that you cannot teach old dog, new trick. Save the children. Save the young people. And they will have change.
Let me just add one quick thing to it. So, Robert, the thing I would just reinforce to you is we're saying many of the things you're saying is not happening in the community. We're saying for us, we're going to change that. Right. We're saying for us, we're going to be intentional about advocating our Sigma Beta clubs and challenging our chapters to be a part of them, which means that you'll have the opportunity to participate. You'll have the opportunity on all those challenges that you described to bring that expertise, bring that energy, bring that efficiency, bring that professionalism to support us in making the change. That's going to be the ask, and that's how it will become different.
That's right. So this is the hard part of being the moderator. We have a very hard out time, and it's coming up very shortly. So
I'll be real quick.
All right, sir.
Well, actually, I can't. Lawyers are longer than ministers. So.
And he's a past president, too.
Let me pose it this way, because I've been in this venue for some time and been promoting the idea of support of our Sigma Beta Club by forming the National Sigma Beta Club Foundation. And I understand that there's a commitment or drive by the current president to do all he can to make it possible for mentoring these young men. But we know that mentoring is a very tough job. It means a lot of commitment from a lot of people, but it also means putting resources into what we're going to do to make a difference to the young men that we're serving. And that resource can be both in terms of manpower and also money. And one of the problems we have in our organization, we don't seem to have the commitment to do it. So my question to the panelists and, of course, the current administration, what do you plan to do different in light of the fact that we have been preaching and asking for years to do something to make a difference? What are you going to do different to make that happen? And to those of you who were not in a position, what do you plan to do to offer your help to ensure that we get more of our membership committed to make this happen? Because it's been a tough job with the National Foundation to make this happen, not getting the support. We need to ensure that we can mentor young kids across the country.
Yeah, so I'll take this one. You know, when you think about my passion, art, and my commitment to the Beta Club, it's very real. It's not circumstantial. It's not something that I want to give some lip service to. It's something that I believe in. And to be real honest with you, I believe in it because I know the impact that positive experience can have on a young person's life. I've lived that. And the part that speaks to your specific question, as you and I have talked, I think the impact for our foundation, with respect, it has to start at the top. And it has to start at the top with myself, setting the expectation and giving the vision and the resources. We've got to, since you asked the question, we've got to really look at our foundation. And we got to look at it honestly. And we got to look at it to see, is it going to really give us what it is that we're seeking? What are we seeking? We're seeking people on that foundation who can bring resources and experience. What is the experience? How do we drive the change that we're seeking that's going to have long-term impact and measurable for our students? The only reason I asked Janabu to join in that role is because I saw the work that they had done in New Jersey. Now, how can we scale that work? And how can we challenge our administration, which we'll talk in great detail on Friday and Saturday? How do we challenge our administration to bring the resources? Because one of the things I've learned, Phi Beta Sigma has a tremendous amount of talent within its fraternity. It has a tremendous amount of financial resources within the organization. We have to do what Kroger does. We got to have an attractive product that people are willing to invest in. And once we get that, and we got the integrity behind the program, I absolutely believe we're going to get the commitment. My challenge to the chapters is we've got to, I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but I know consistency is important. We've got to bring our support for our Sigma Beta Club off the corner of our desk and put it in the centerpiece. If we do that and do the things that we just talked about in collaboration with you, I'm confident that we're going to have great results at the end. We got the right guy leading it, we got the right support, and we got a board who's behind it. And I know with your work, we'll get it done. I'm confident of that. Thank you, brother.
In case you didn't notice, these are our last two questions. You're on.
I'm gonna be short and quick.
Okay.
So we heard. I want to thank you all for addressing us here today, brothers. I've listened to all of you all today, and I took note. And I can't talk in the amount of time I want to talk, but I'm gonna say this, brother Congressman Lewis. So many times I've heard you tell all your brothers at our chapter, Sigma, 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 other brothers around the country, how your mother didn't want you to go out and get in trouble. But you got in trouble. You got beat up, you went with the movement, and you got in trouble. And you told us that we ought to fight and continue to get in good trouble. I don't think a lot of us are getting in good trouble today. You know, we satisfied with our good jobs, our homes, but we're not getting in good trouble. I want to know what kind of trouble the Congressional Black Caucus is getting in to address the high unemployment rate with the black community, especially the youth. The high divorce rate in this country because we're losing our family, and the high jobless rate. Because we need to get in trouble, and we need to address this trouble because our country is under siege, politically, economically, and socially. So I want to know what kind of trouble we're getting into. I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to get in trouble.
And before we answer that question, let me apologize, but that is the last question. That's it. That's not me. That came from way higher than my pay grade. So that's it.
Thank you very much, brother. This brother want to say something? I think other brothers want to say something? And I would be very brief. It's up to you.
Mm-hmm.
The Black Caucus cannot do it for you.
That's right. See, that's what this is
Look,
about.
we went out and elected someone that is, we're not in the majority in the House or in the Senate. But there's certain things that we can do, and we're trying every single day to help. Most of the members come in and they fight. You saw what we tried to do on gun violence? For the first time in the history of our country, we had a sit-in on the floor of the House. Almost every single Democratic member, because gun violence is real. We're losing too many people, too many children, too many kids in school, playground, mothers and fathers. We got to stop it. And the Speaker refused to bring a bill to the floor. If the Speaker 2 years ago had brought a bill to deal with comprehensive immigration reform, we would have passed it. And President Obama would have signed it into law. As people of color, we didn't turn out like we should have turned out and voted. But we're going to continue to fight and push and pull. So when you see something, say something, do something. Rosa Parks didn't wait. She got out there and she inspired me. Dr. King inspired me. I wrote him a letter when I was 17 years old. He wrote me back and sent me a round-trip Greyhound bus ticket, invited me to come to Montgomery and meet with him. The students in Nashville, we didn't wait for our elders. We were inspired by the Little Rock Nine and others. We conducted nonviolent workshop. We met in the little Methodist church for a whole year, continued meetings until we started sitting in. The original Freedom Ride, there was 13 of us, beaten, left bloody, unconscious. So you don't need the whole world, just a few brave, courageous souls getting out there and getting in the way.
That's right.
Inspiring others to get in the way with you. You can do it.
It's never been a crowd. Never. Coretta Scott King once told me, Joe, if I'd had a nickel for every black person that said that they were at the March on Washington, I'd be a millionaire. It's never been a crowd. And I would also point out, and this will answer your question directly, and I was about ready to say, you don't have to answer that, I will answer for you. And I'll tell you why I was going to say that. I interview on my show frequently members of the Congressional Black Caucus. I can't tell you how much legislation that they have introduced. Right. How you have, is it Barbara Lee from Oakland, who introduced legislation to take away presidential authority to start a war. Yeah. And you had a president yesterday that stood before the United Nations talking about he's going to totally devastate an entire country. You've got a Senate that refuses to give up now. They've waited and refuses to give up now an effort to get rid of Obamacare. And the only reason they're wanting to get rid of Obamacare is because it's named Obama, because before it was Obama, it was Romney Care, and they only want to get rid of it because they go back to what I said, undervalue, underestimate, and marginalize to take a legacy away from that. So here's what I'm saying to you, and I'm going to end it right here. What you do is you register people to vote. This organization ought to be doing it right now. Do not wait till October or that of 20 18 to start registering people to vote. The Congressional Black Caucus can't do anything when they're in the minority. They can't, look, over in Congress, you can't even rent a room unless you get permission from the party that's in the majority. Now, that's a reality.
Joe, will you yield one
Yeah, I will yield to the senior congressman from Georgia.
Thank you for yielding, Joe.
Yes, sir.
You're so kind, brother. Brother, most people don't know or realize I introduced the legislation.
That's right.
Many years ago to create the African American Museum on the Mall.
That's right.
Took me 15
years. 15 years.
But I didn't give up. I didn't give up. Determined to get it passed. And President George W. Bush signed it into law. But President Obama was there for the groundbreaking, and he was there for the opening. And we're going to celebrate the 30th anniversary, the first anniversary, on the 30th of September. And you may not know this, the fraternity played a major role.
That's right.
That's raised money, right, brother?
Absolutely.
And made a large contribution. And there are more people attending this museum than going to the White House these days. And I will urge all of you, if you have an opportunity, go there. Take your children, encourage other people. It tells our story.
It does. Can I reclaim my time,
Yes,
Mr.
you must.
President? No,
You know what? I'm going to have to reclaim all this time right now.
I think the fraternity really needs to think about announcing, organizing a major voter registration campaign before you leave out of here. You really do, with a goal. And please don't wait till 2018 to get started. You need to get going right now.
So, wait a minute. I know the moderator feels like he's...
I am going to be fired.
Oh, yes.
I'm going to be fired.
But we're going to close it up. with
This is
something
the
like-
last word.
The last word.
The last word.
The last word. You know, you got to remember, this thing starts local.
That's right.
You know, we're talking about Congress, but if you don't know who your mayor is, if you ain't electing your school board, if you ain't getting behind these individuals, then you are already out of control. So I'm asking them, encouraging each of you to go back to your communities. Who are you putting on your school board?
That's right.
And have you written a check to any of them? We got some candidates in here right now. Members of are there anybody running for school board in here right now? Is there anybody?
Running for anything.
Anybody? Is there anybody running for anything in here right now? You need to get to know those individuals. If you don't know who the local people are that are running, that's what you can do. Help them get elected. Because once you get a taste of winning, then you're going to get your congressperson elected. And once you get a taste of that, then you're going to probably get your president elected in 2020, whoever you want.
Amen.
Locally.
I got to put an amen on it. Let's give this panel a wonderful round of applause. Thank you all. But don't go. Don't leave. Don't leave. Don't leave. Don't leave. The actual last word is going to come from our 35th International President, Michael Crystal. Thank you all so much for allowing me to be here and be a part of this wonderful event.
Just have a quick seat. I promise you I won't keep you long. But as our moderator is taking his seat, let's give him a round of applause, please. You know, every now and again, you have an opportunity to have a vision, and then that vision comes to fruition. When we decided to do our Real Talk session this evening, prior to this evening, our goal was to have a discussion around our theme. And as we started putting it together, we started thinking about the individuals we wanted to participate. And our goal was to get someone in high esteem from each one of our 3 programs. And we thought we were very successful in doing so. So do me a favor, give our panelists another round of applause. What a great discussion. And I'm going to ask for a little bit of a personal privilege, because when we put this panel together, I was blessed to have my family to know that I was going to be here. And I shared with my sister and my cousin that we would be having a panel discussion around some very key issues. And as we were having it, I'm going to call him my favorite cousin. He's almost like a nephew to me. He was so committed to want to come here. He was more committed to wanting to come here than his mother was. But join me in recognizing my cousin, my nephew. Jay, would you stand, please? We talk about the youth. This young man was committed to coming, wanted to be here, and he really wanted to be here not because of being with his cousin, uncle. He wanted to be here really for the discussion. Yeah, so proud of him. And recognize my cousin, Mona, please stand. And then my sister, Carol. Both proud members of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. But I want to recognize some of our D9 representatives who came. Madam Graham, would you stand again, please? The president of Sigma Gamma Rho, my good friend, Deborah Catchin, thank you for coming. The president of Omega Psi Phi, Antonio Knox, would you please stand? And if your schedule allows, the Qs will be having a similar discussion on tomorrow. And we're excited about your discussion, but we're also excited that our International Director of Sigma Beta Clubs, Janabu Williams, will be a panelist on that, so I would welcome you having a chance to attend. I think he's left, but give Thomas Battles, president of Kappa Alpha Psi, a round of applause as well for being here. And you know, like everything, you always stand on a foundation. And I'm so fortunate and so excited that we have so many of our past presidents here this evening. President Womack, 27th and 29th. Would you give him a round of applause? Brother Bill Stanley, our 28th International President. Brother Peter Adams, our 30th International President. Brother Arthur Thomas, our 31st International President. And Brother Jimmy Hammock, our 33rd International President. And then if you're on the General Board, would you just please stand if you don't mind? Let's give our General Board a round of applause. Didn't say this earlier, and I don't think the moderator said it earlier, but we streamed live this entire session. So brothers all over the country, people all over the country, had an opportunity to witness this. And the prevailing message that I really wanted to deliver during this conversation was I didn't want to talk about the problem. I wanted us to offer solutions to the problem. And I want this administration that I'm blessed to lead to offer up solutions. And so the conversation was tonight. I believe we introduced some solutions, so I'm going to chalk that up as a success. But I also know starting tomorrow, the work really begins. And so I thank you for coming this evening. I thank you for what you're going to do in respect, and I'm talking to the brothers now. I thank you for what you're going to do in driving our mission of being a brotherhood of conscious men, actively serving in our communities. And I'm really looking forward to our discussion during our General Board Strategic Planning Retreat on Friday and Saturday. Thank you for attending. Godspeed, and I look forward to seeing you on next year. Thank you very much.